When I started Coding Challenges in March, I was really hoping to get 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. I had 1,500 by the end of the first weekend, having announced it on Friday. By Sunday night it was there. I just noticed it's recently passed 60,000 between Substack and LinkedIn. So, chipping away at that million.
Welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, where we demystify what it takes to break into tech. I'm your host, James Hudnall, and my goal is to highlight real-life examples of people with non-traditional backgrounds moving into careers they love, so you can too. Hey everyone, today I'm joined by John Crickett, a software engineer. Now John's also on a mission to level up 1 million software developers, and he's a mastermind behind CodingChallenges.fyi. John, welcome to Exponential Growth. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
So thank you, James. As I said, I'm all for Coding Challenges. I've been a software engineer for professionally over 27 years now. During that time, I've been a senior individual contributor, and I've been a manager of VP engineering at VC-backed startup, and a head of a global team at a very large corporate. Now I'm back to an IC role, working as a cloud architect, as we briefly discussed a moment ago before we started. My main focus for since mid-March has been Coding Challenges, building up a newsletter and helping, as you say, aiming to help 1 million developers level up. That seemed like a very ambitious goal, and when I started Coding Challenges in March, I was really hoping to get 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. I had 1,500 by the end of the first weekend, having announced it on Friday. By Sunday night it was there. I just noticed it's recently passed 60,000 between Substack and LinkedIn. So, chipping away at that million.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And it's an incredible resource, John. I want to get into that. But before we go there, I'd love to learn more about you and your journey into tech. So, you'd mentioned almost 3 decades of experience in the industry. But if you take us way back growing up, did you always know that you wanted to be a developer?
No, I definitely did not want to be a developer. I mean, I've always enjoyed playing with computers. I started writing software, I think, when I was about 6. Got serious when I was 9. Very different world back then. It was like writing BASIC on a ZX Spectrum. Quite often getting the screwdriver out to fix things. About 9, I went to boarding school. I'd been living abroad with my parents and came back to the UK, went to boarding school. They had some BBC micros in our maths class for some reason, but away from school. And during the weekends, I started learning to program more seriously on those with BBC Basic. And since 9, it's been a hobby. I had some rather poor attempts at doing AI work as a 9-year-old on a BBC micro. And I always enjoyed it. I still had different career plans, which I pursued until about 18. And then it got to 18 and it was clear that wasn't the right career for me. And did a computer science degree started in 1995, graduated in 1998. And as you say, it was quite an interesting time. In 1996, my first summer holiday, I got a job with one of the UK's first internet service providers. And that became quite interesting, moving away from BASIC and the Pascal we done at university. I started learning C at my first job, a pad of paper and a pencil, because I didn't have a computer. And in those days, to buy a computer, you got out a catalogue, ordered the parts, and waited a week or 2 for it all to arrive in the post before you could do anything. So my first week or so on that job, I had an A4 pad, a paper, a pencil, and a laser. And at lunchtime, I sneaked onto the guy next to me computer to try and copy my code into Vi
Awesome.
and compile it on the Unix box that we had.
That's incredible.
So that was quite incredible. Early days of the internet. I mean, Netscape Navigator version 1 was what we were using. There was no JavaScript really then. There was none of the modern frameworks. Everything was done with CGI. We used Perl predominantly, Perl version 4. So fun times. And then during that early job in my summer holidays, I learned C and Perl, and a bit of database design and SQL. So good fun times.
Yeah, you did a bit of it all. And I'm curious, John, if you think back to that time, right there on the cusp of the internet, becoming more and more ubiquitous around the world, I'm curious, the pace of innovation maybe within the company that you had joined, was it incredibly fast? Was it almost unsustainably fast, or was it more measured?
Well, I was only there for 3 months. It was a university holiday job, but even in that time, things changed dramatically. Microsoft launched, I think, Internet Explorer 1. There was starting to talk about ActiveX. We were starting to hear about Java, and Java, I've forgotten what they're called. Java embedded in a web page was starting to become the rage and an exciting thing. So even in that 3-month period, an awful lot changed. And amazingly, back in the time, it's hard to believe now, but the internet was marketed in shops as a CD. So we gave people a CD and said, get online.
I remember those, the AOL CDs, at least in the US where I was, with the very expensive phone bills.
Yeah. Yeah, so it changed dramatically. And, I sat behind the help desk, and as somebody in technology, it was almost unbelievable. And you hear about this and think it's something from a joke in a comic strip. But the amount of people I heard phoning up the help desk and say, can't go on the internet. Have you plugged your modem in? What's a modem? But it's just, it was the early days. It's the first time that most people were getting online. They never heard of modems. They didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Somebody gave them a CD in the local shop, and they told them to get on the internet. It was great, and they were trying. They didn't know what you needed, what it involved. But it's fun times.
We take all this for granted now, John. We just turn on our computers. It automatically connects to Wi-Fi for the most part. Everything's abstracted away. But that's really interesting that you got to experience that. And I did as well, to an extent, not to the level that you did. But it's kind of cool being able to experience the before and the after, and maybe therefore to appreciate the after that much more.
Yeah, I mean, my kids can't understand now that I lived in a world without Spotify and
yeah, right,
without ubiquitous access to all this information.
Yeah. Well, you'd mentioned that first job was maybe what I would refer to as an internship for the 3-month stint that you did. What happened after that? Did it take you a while to land the first permanent role, or?
So no, so that was my first summer holiday. So I think ran from end of June to early September. The year before that, in sixth form, we do work experience over here in the UK. So I spent a week working with a very traditional engineering company, doing work experience, and I got a little bit of exposure to C there on a VAX VMS. And I talked to them saying, I'm going to university to study computer science. Do you have a internship program or anything, or any chances for holiday jobs? And they said, we don't really do that. Anyway, I kept in touch with them, and about a month into me working at this ISP, they got back in touch with me and said, yeah, we're going to set that up. Do you want to come and join us? And I explained I was working at the ISP then, but I'd love to for future holidays. So then for the rest of my holidays, for that Christmas, Easter, and the following 2 summer holidays, I worked for them.
Okay. And then how about when you graduated? Was that the company that you...
and when I graduated, I went and worked for them for a couple of years.
Nice. Yeah.
So that was a very interesting introduction to it, as throughout that time, as you say, technology was moving rapidly. We had Internet Explorer 1 and 2. CSS eventually evolved. Amazon went from being a single grey web page costing about $30 to starting to have most things available. Google went from this crazy picture you saw of a server housed in a Lego framework to actually a usable search engine.
Yeah.
All the search engines that I remember at that time, things like Alta Vista, all disappeared. I remember Yahoo being an index of a couple hundred links that you use to navigate the web, and it changed dramatically. And by 1998, in the summer when I started working then full time, every office had internet access, starting to have things like, I don't know if you remember them, when I was doing a lot of C++ at the time, and if you wanted the documentations for Microsoft Compiler, it came on a stack of 5 CDs that you paid extra for. They started moving that onto the internet, so you could actually search it. And
nice. And these were the days still of 56K, or were we getting faster yet?
So the company, I think by then, had a 128K ISDN line. So,
okay.
We're getting a bit faster by then, but it was still pretty trivial compared to now.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And so how long did that role? I guess how long were you in that role?
I was in that role for a couple of years. I'd say it was a very traditional engineering company that did some fixed price projects and also did some kind of bums on seats things. So through them, I'd done my dissertation project, which I did on constraint propagation, solve optimization problems. And we did that around timetabling for railways. And the company that I was working for had a quite close relationship with a railway signaling company who won a contract to renew the signaling for Singapore Metro. So part of that was going to include a timetabling solution. Having done that for my dissertation, I became part of that team, got put on site. About 2 days into being put on site, the timetabling element got dropped from the project and de-scoped. So I never got to actually do that,
Nice.
but I spent the next couple of years working on site for a signaling company and doing some signaling systems.
Okay.
Got a couple of trips to Singapore out of that, which was very cool, very
Yeah.
interesting approach. And during that time as well, I started to read about extreme programming. I started trying to introduce some of those approaches to the places I worked, and some interesting approaches there. Being a junior developer, trying to change the way very traditional engineering companies worked.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about that? Even if I don't, I feel like that does still translate, John, both today and to the audience that will be listening. Even if maybe a lot of the people don't have that first role. Like how did you communicate that as a junior engineer with what you believe to be good ideas, but you were still going up against more senior engineers?
I had mixed success. I think early in my career, I didn't appreciate how important soft skills were and how important it was to learn how to influence people. So I had less success than I would have liked. And I think I was too slow in learning the lessons that actually moving away from that junior level and starting to have more impact, you need to focus on more on the influence. And life isn't a meritocracy. Just because it's a good idea, it doesn't mean it's going to be accepted. And if you just tell people it's obviously a good idea and you're an idiot for not following it, you don't get very far.
Yeah, I could see that.
So, yeah, I was a bit young and naive at the time, I think, and far too often I was like, well, this is blindingly obvious. You sit here and you tell me we have to do a code review and we have to print out reams of A4 paper, go through it line by line. And if code reviews are good, and you say a code review is good, and Kent Beck says a code review is good, then pair programming is obviously good because it's code review turned up to 11. So why are you not getting this? And it's not the way to convince people. It's not the way to get people on board with it.
Yeah. But you learned that eventually.
Yeah. Perhaps slower than I would like to admit to now.
But you did.
But the flip side of that is I was very frustrated as a junior that a lot of the senior developers I came across had stopped learning. They'd got to a point after, at least my impression at the time was they'd got 4 or 5 years into their career, thought they knew it all and had stopped learning, and they weren't interested in learning new things. And I found that very frustrating. In some respects, I still see that now. I still see a lot of senior developers like that now. And in the last couple of years in particular, I work with a number of junior developers that I see coming out of university into their first job, or maybe their second job, with anywhere from 0 to 4 years experience, and hitting a lot of senior developers that have reached that same level and aren't willing to learn, aren't interested in developing their careers. So I have a lot of empathy for those junior developers, and I'm always impressed at the quality of a lot of junior developers that they can bring. So I personally quite enjoy working with them because quite often I can teach them something from the experience that I've gained the hard way, and they inevitably teach me something as well.
Yep.
So, I feel for some of their frustrations.
No, I love that. And I mean, many of your LinkedIn posts, you're prolific on LinkedIn to those that are unaware. And so many of your posts really resonate, John, because they speak to the importance of soft skills in addition to the, more of the harder skills that you show in your Coding Challenges website. So really appreciate all the content you put out in that regard. And
Thank you.
I guess we want to maybe, not that I want to summarize your 3 decades in the industry, but maybe for sake of brevity, just so we can cover everything that we wanted to. I think you had mentioned at the beginning that you went from being an IC, as you've already described, to management. And I think now you'd also mentioned that you're back to an IC role. So I guess to the extent you think is interesting and relevant, I think everybody's story is completely interesting and relevant. What was that transition like? What did you like and dislike about the transition into management? And then maybe we can tackle the back end coming back.
So, without wanting to make it too long, I guess it's not as simple as that. So, as I mentioned, I started my career in 1996 as a summer job. Then I did what we could call an internship over the next 2 years with the company, and I started with that company. After I'd been there for a couple of years, around about 2001, I'd seen a lot of this stuff, all this hype about startups and all these young entrepreneurs starting things like Google and Amazon and Facebook. It's probably just before Facebook. But there was a lot of hype, a lot of talk about entrepreneurship, a lot of this .com stuff. And I'd always had plans to start my own business after I got into software. But I decided in 2001 that why not? All these other young entrepreneurs are doing it. I'm in my early 20s, I can do that. So I actually started a business on September 11th, 2001, which is obviously quite a memorable date to start it on for all the wrong reasons, unfortunately. And I did that for several years, and that was my main transition to management because I started the company. It's funding out my pocket. There is no boss. It's me.
Yeah. What was the business? No, I'm curious.
A tremendous failure of imagination. It's called Crickett Software Limited.
Okay.
And everyone else is doing all these exciting .coms and startups, and all these things like Amazon were there, and Google and Yahoo, and in the UK here we had lastminute.com and everything. And I thought, I don't really have a good idea that's going to work there. Don't know how to raise VC money, don't know how to do that, but I do know bums on seat selling software consultancy to people.
Okay.
So that's what we did.
Okay.
And we started that and did that for about a year. During that time, I was working away from home, stayed at a bed and breakfast, in a very traditional sense, bed and breakfast. And the owner there said, these internet things, somebody should make a bed and breakfast search engine. I said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So he asked me to quote for doing it. So we gave him a quote of how much it would take for us to build such a website. And he went, nah, I was thinking that you might be able to do it for 50 quid. The answer was no, sorry. But got me thinking. By then my brother joined me in the business and we went, yeah, why don't we do this? So after a few beers one night, we sat down and built the bulk of the site and fleshed it out. And then I think January the 1st, 2002, we decided to launch that and grew it. And we had bed breakfast payers to be listed on there, got it indexed in the search engines, and people could find and book a bed and breakfast to it.
Nice.
Some moderate success with that. It's making a few £1,000s a year. So we were doing that and still running the software consulting side and more using that as a portfolio site to say, hey, look, we're not just claiming we can build an internet business for you. We've done it. Here's the proof. So we did that alongside the software consultancy for a few years. I had a few strange pivots there, including somebody approached us and tried to buy that site. And we were a little bit, well, why would anyone want to buy this for a significant amount of money? So agreed to go and meet this guy in a pub in Oxford one weekend and have lunch. Had a chat, and from that we ended up pivoting and then ended up building out the travel side of websites and building a portfolio of travel websites that were doing moderately well for a couple of years.
Okay. So did you end up selling it and that's why you pivoted or expanded, or
No, we didn't sell it. We had a chat and then we decided that actually there's no point selling this. The guy I met was a very cool guy. He shared a lot of information out of his business, and after we talked for a bit, he said, okay, you guys shouldn't sell it, you should build it. Here's what I would do. Gave us a lot of really great advice. Nice. And we did that, and it went to doing several million a year in bookings. So that was very cool, very worthwhile. Yeah. As they say, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So some random email out of the blue, got in the car, went and talked to this guy, have lunch, and learned a lot of information. We did that for a few years. We're mainly doing that via good SEO. Then Google changed its algorithms and SEO became less effective. And I was kind of missing doing proper software development. My brother had got an interest. He got married and started developing an interest in going to pursue something different. So kind of a few things led to that coming apart, and I moved off and started another software consultancy and doing more traditional software consultancy again. Also met my wife, got married, started a family, and at that point also decided that having run a business for years, I wanted a bit more experience. So I decided to do an MBA part-time as well. That then led us to about 2008, 2009, when we had the financial crash. And I had a couple of customers that owed us quite a lot of money for the business then. And it got to the point where I was like, I'm a software engineer. I'm supposed to be building software and helping people build software. I'm spending most of my day on the phone to people, threatening to take their homes away because they owe us a lot of money. I've got contractors and staff to pay. I feel sympathetic for them because of the financial crisis, but I've still got bills to pay that their money's got to cover too. So at that point, I went, I need to finish my MBA. I want to focus. I've got a young family. I need less stress. So I went back to permanent employment as a senior software engineer. Did that for about 18 months, commuting to the city of London. After that, as I was getting to the end of my MBA, decided to take a few months off and finish my dissertation. About a week into taking some time off, I got a phone call from a recruitment agent who said, John, there's a company just down the road from you doing AI. They need a contractor for 3 months. Are you interested? And I was, oh, okay, I've got 6 months to finish my dissertation. AI is why I got into computing 20 odd years ago. I'd love to come and get some experience of doing it in the real world. Went along to that company as a contractor for what was supposed to be a 3-month contract. And within a couple of days of being there, I could see that everything was going on with the software development. It was a complete disaster. They needed help. And I started speaking up, saying, well, how about this? We could do this. Part of your problem is requirements all over the place. This is how I would sort them out. Part of your problem is that software is bug-ridden and what's going out to customers doesn't work. Unit tests and automated testing would really resolve this. Long story short, I ended up being offered the role of head of development there and becoming their VP engineering. I was there for 3.5 years, and we sold the software to people like Apple and Facebook.
Nice.
We pitched it to LinkedIn, but never closed there, as well as Dropbox and a number of companies. So I had quite a few trips to Silicon Valley. Met a lot of interesting people there.
Can I ask you, John?
So
during that time, can I ask you, when you mentioned that you saw everything you felt was being done, maybe not incorrectly, but things could be done a lot better, were you ever afraid to speak up, or were you just so confident in what you knew, maybe coupled with the fact that maybe by this time you'd also developed empathy, so you had a better framework to communicate that?
I wasn't afraid to speak up because I was a contractor there for 3 months.
Okay.
I hadn't planned to do the job. I was planning to do my dissertation.
Got it.
And when I was speaking up, it was a case of, I'm here for 13 weeks.
Okay.
I can see these things are broken. Have you thought of doing this? So, yeah, there was more empathy and a bit more soft skills, but I still had a lot to learn at that point, even then. Still, even now, to be honest.
Sure.
But I was there for a short time. I was there out of curiosity because it was AI. I wanted to work with AI. It wasn't necessarily that I was expecting to be there for long. I was just speaking up. It was like, hey, I've seen these problems dozens of times in the consultancy I've done. I know how to fix them. Have you guys thought of doing this?
Right.
And it was mixed with feedback. There were some of the more established software engineers there that had been part of creating the environment that didn't work, who perhaps felt threatened and didn't enjoy that. There were other software engineers there who were like, okay, yeah, I'm tired of this always being broken. It would be nice to try and see if things are better. And again, throughout that time, I didn't just talk about these things. I was like, okay, I'm responsible in this case for this part of the project. I don't care what anyone else is doing. I'm going to write unit tests for it. I'm going to do this. And when my part of the project, me as a newbie who's been in the business 2 weeks, was the only bit that was delivered and worked, the proof was in the pudding. The results were there. And then so some of the more junior developers that work on the project went, hey, John, tell us more. We've never delivered anything on time before. You've delivered it early and it works. What's the secret? I was like, well, I've just found a unit testing framework for what you're doing. I've built the code. I've been through the requirements. I've written some tests and I've figured it out. So they started adopting it and taking on those practices, and it spread, leading by example, basically.
Yeah, and good for them for being open to getting better and improving and not just being closed off to that.
Well, it's like I say, it's often the junior developers that are more interested and that are keen to, perhaps less set in their ways.
Yeah. Let me ask you, at this point in your story, John, did you have any designs on creating content on LinkedIn or like the Coding Challenges website that you maintain today? Or was that still
No, this was back in 2012.
Okay. So no designs. Maybe there was no thought in your mind that one day you wanted to do something like that? Not yet?
Nope. So, Coding Challenges was something that didn't come to me until like I say, about the 2nd or 3rd of March. I started thinking about it this year.
Okay.
And I think I announced it about the 11th of March, if I remember rightly. So not something I'd thought about, but I guess to answer, yes, I had been creating content before then. So going back to, I think, about 1997, I led a magazine called EXE, I think, and in there was an article by a guy called Francis Grasper. I can't remember what it was about, but at the end he mentioned the ACCU, which is the association, or was then the Association of C and C++ users. And I'd done a bit of C. I thought, this is great, sounds really useful, I should look into that. Visited their website. Wasn't much on it at that time, I don't think, but they had a mailing list that you could sign it to. So in late 97, early 98, I signed up to their mailing list. And that was an amazing resource. And when I started working, I joined the ACCU. I had money, I could join there. I think it cost £30 a year at the time, which as a student was a lot of beer money, which I wasn't prepared to part with. But once I was working, it was fine. And that was amazing because at the time there were so many great software developers, and particularly from the C and C++ community part of the ACCU.
Right.
And on the mailing list they were there, and you could ask questions and they would jump in and answer. And there were some fantastic people there now. And I think in 99, maybe 2000, I got to go to their conference as well. Spent my money on that. And, if you go through a who's who of people that have had an impact, particularly back then, still to this day, they all spoke at the conference. A lot of them were active in the ACU mailing list.
Okay.
So, there were people like Kevin Henney there talking all the time. Francis Grasper spoke a few times. John Jagger, quite a few other people. Bjorn Straustrup was there. Andre Alexandrescu spoke at one of the conferences. Dietmar Kuhl, and Herb Sutter, and a lot of the members were also involved in the C++ Standards Committee. So got exposed to a lot of people there that, and slightly involved in the fringe of that for a little while as well.
Okay. Any content creation on your?
It was an amazing resource and a lot of mentoring, a lot of chance to be exposed to some great people there and to learn from them.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Sorry. Well, let's go back to where we were. I think you mentioned you'd gotten promoted to VP of Engineering, and I guess from there, where do you go from there? So that's so long ago. Like, are you going to become CEO? You've got this MBA.
So I was, so that was 2012. I joined them. I was there till 2016. There were a few changes in the leadership of that company, and I didn't necessarily see eye to eye with the new CEO that we've got at the time. It was quite funny actually going out to. The CEO was from, shall we say, a different generation. He was in his 70s, and had apparently had some moderate success with a business 20, 30 years ago, and still felt that he was a great CEO and he would do great things with the business. Unfortunately, I wasn't convinced, and to me he lost a lot of credibility with us and our customers when we were out in Silicon Valley. This 70-year-old Brit whose background in sales, going into Silicon Valley companies and meeting some incredibly intelligent people, and he was incredibly patronizing to the people we met. I think on Facebook when we were there, they were telling us the average age of their engineer was 26 at the time, and some of the fairly senior and incredibly smart people we met were maybe early 30s, and he was incredibly patronizing to them. And his view was that in Britain, and quite often over the last 20 years, sales guys have been the breadwinners and the important people, and engineers are a cost center. And he took that attitude into Silicon Valley companies, and it doesn't really fly.
Yeah.
So he upset a lot of our customers. I think burned a lot of bridges there, and I spent a lot of my time trying to patch relationships. And it particularly stood out to me. We went, or rather, he went to pitch to a VC in Silicon Valley for additional funding, and he allowed me to be in the room. In this somewhat patronizing way, and it really struck me the difference there, and that we were sat in this room, myself and him, in San Francisco with his VCs who have invested in several unicorn companies, and they knew most of our clients at Facebook and Apple. They knew the senior people there. And we walked in, and his view was that I was there to hold his bag and be in the background. The VC, he sat down and started talking. The VCs cut him off after about 30 seconds and said, "That's great, but we want to know about the engineering. We invest in tech companies." So they turned to me and asked me a question, and he immediately cut me off and said, "I'm the CEO, you should talk to me."
Wow.
Then the meeting kind of went downhill from there, really. You can see that they kept addressing their questions to me, trying to talk to me. And he couldn't get his head around the fact that, we were pitching to them for their investment. We have to play the game that they want, and we have to talk to them. And if they want to hear about the engineering, that's what matters, not his sales pitch, not his view on selling. So there was a clash of cultures there.
Yeah.
So I didn't have particular faith in him. I ended up leaving that in 2016. Went to the City of London again to lead a fairly corporate team.
Okay.
Perhaps bit off more than I can chew in trying to rescue a failing development team there. And that I should perhaps have picked up the signs in the interview that a lot of the problems there were actually the senior management. And I didn't have the soft skills to change them in the way they were. I have a number of horror stories from that environment, but perhaps won't go into them right now. I stayed there for a few months and then thought, this is not for me. It's a bad environment. It's incredibly toxic. I don't want to be here. I don't have the skills to fix this. And I ended up going back to contracting. Went along to a company that's an American company based out of Austin, Texas, called Cirrus Logic. Again, went there as a contractor. A couple of months in, my mouth was speaking up again, going, "Hey, have you thought about this? You could fix this. Have you tried this?" And fairly soon got offered a permanent role to set up a new team and build out a data engineering tools department.
Okay. How do you, I guess at this point in your story, how did you enjoy management versus when you were more hands-on code?
I enjoy both. I don't particularly see the difference from the point of view of what interests me. So from my point of view, it's all, we have a problem as a business. We need to get it fixed. What can we do to get it fixed? My wife teases me about the fact that I say very often, how can we make this happen? So that's my point of view is we want to get something done. I don't mind if I do that by me hacking the code and doing something technical. I don't mind if I do it by building a team to do it. I don't mind if I do it by taking a developer that doesn't know how to do it and collaborating with them, and pair programming, or with a couple of guys mob programming. As far as I'm concerned, it's all, we have a problem to solve. We're figuring out how to get it done.
Yeah.
And like I say, I enjoy doing that as an individual contributor. I enjoy doing that and building a team.
Yeah. All right. No, that makes sense. Would you, when you were a manager, would you still, assuming that you couldn't be as hands-on, were you doing coding projects on the side for fun, just to, I guess, keep scratching that itch?
Yeah, I've pretty much always done something on the side for fun.
Okay.
But I wasn't getting much chance in the role to do it.
Okay.
But I mean, I did at the VC-backed company up to 2016. I did get a chance. I did a few prototypes, and I built a few things there. Even if I didn't necessarily contribute very much production code, I still built some prototypes and identified some issues and solved a few problems and got some hands-on technical stuff in different ways.
Okay.
So I was with that company for a couple of years, but during that time, my kids are all home educated, so I needed a bit more time to support their education as they're getting older. And I was traveling a lot. I mean, during the last year I worked for them, I did 28 different trips. So I was away from home quite a lot, which is fine. I quite enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun because in between times, as my team was quite distributed, I was working from home quite a lot. So I didn't mind being away. When I wasn't away, I was at home. But I then got a new manager who said, "You've got to be in the office." My response was, "Why do I have to be in the office? I'm based in this office here, and one person from my team of 20 odd is in the same office. The rest are split between Salt Lake City, Austin, Texas, Edinburgh, Madrid. Whether I'm in the office or I'm at home makes no difference to that. So either the travel goes or I work from home. He said the work from home and the travel can't go. So I said, okay, then I have to go.
Yeah.
And at that point, then I started looking for a new role. And a contract came up which allowed me to work from home most of the time. So I ended up going back to being an individual contributor so that I could work remotely.
Okay.
And ironically, that was in March 2019.
Okay.
And a year later, we're all working remotely anyway.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And now you'd mentioned AI throughout this story, John, and I really want to dive into that. Either, I guess at this point in your story, it sounds like you'd had an opportunity to play with it a little bit in production, but especially given how, I guess, generative AI is on the tip of everybody's tongue today. At this point in your story, were you able to do anything AI related to scratch that itch that you had identified earlier?
I've done a number of things. So particularly that startup I talked about, we were doing, I don't know. I find it difficult now to draw the line between what I call AI and what I call machine learning. So
sure.
we were dealing with a lot of optimization problems. We were using what I'd probably more say is optimization in a way, in that the core engine was evolutionary computing, and we had a few neural networks to identify patterns that we would then feed into that. So compared to generative AI, very simple neural nets, nothing particularly complex. But it was a really fun time. We got to deal with a lot of that. I built a few prototypes for different neural nets to experiment with options. And the optimization problems in evolution computing was actually really, really fun. I got quite a lot of in-depth knowledge about that, and 6 patents that the company applied for as a result of the work we did then. So that was, nice. It was really fun. And we solved a few problems that our customers couldn't, despite it being their area of expertise.
Yeah.
And I think that's mainly because we were too ignorant to know that it was hard.
Sometimes that's what you need, though, right? You need that beginner's mindset, or not knowing what you don't know to be able to make change.
The problem is that our customers have PhDs in network optimization, which means that they knew all existing techniques incredibly well. We were approaching it from the point of view of, hey, evolutionary computing engine that the CTO had originally built to do stuff in pharmaceuticals. So we bought this evolutionary computing engine in, and actually the pharmaceuticals were modeling the stuff as a graph. Now networks, telecommunications model as a graph quite well. So it was just a different approach to these kind of problems.
Yeah.
And perhaps one that, if you've got a PhD in network optimization, you wouldn't look at bringing in stuff from pharmaceuticals particularly.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you'd mentioned, I think we dropped off on your story a year before COVID comes around. Is this company that you're at that point in the story, is that the company you're at today, or were there more changes in your near future?
No, I contracted with that company for 3 of the last 4 years as a contract role, and I left in May 2022. Took a role with a podcast company, and back into management and permanent, because the contract company was looking to bring people back to the office. As I mentioned before, I'm looking to work remotely, so I took a permanent role with a podcast company to work remote. But when I interviewed in February 2022, things were great. The market was strong.
Great.
By the time I'm being pestered by my dog here.
Oh, we got a guest appearance.
There he is.
What's his name or her name?
His name is Eddie.
Eddie.
Yeah.
All right. To anyone watching, there's Eddie, the real brains behind the operation over there.
Absolutely. He's often mentioned on LinkedIn. I made the occasional appearance as a picture, but
the official mascot.
It's not supposed to be joining me just now. Sorry, where were we?
I know you'd mentioned, I think.
I was saying I've joined a podcast company as an engineering manager.
Yeah.
I say in January, February 2022, when I interviewed, the market was great. By the time I joined in May, we were starting to see some redundancies, and inevitably, come September 2022, I was made redundant.
Got it.
Ended up going back to the other company for contracting for a bit, and then in July this year, I was introduced through someone I've worked with a couple of times in the past, One of the junior developers I mentored in the past introduced me to the company he's currently at. And that, again, is fully remote opportunity and permanent, so I've ended up back with them.
Yeah.
Working, my title is architect, but it's more general, removing blockers, figuring out how to get things done.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Which,
can I ask you,
as
John?
I said,
Because
appeals to me. How can we make it happen?
yeah, no, I love that. I love that attitude. You've mentioned, like, throughout your story, I hear several times where many times you've been proactive in leaving a job, or sometimes, as you'd mentioned, you'd been made redundant. I love the way that you phrase that. I want to ask you about your mindset throughout, maybe not each time, but maybe how that evolved over time, because I feel like it's a similar mindset to those devs out there that maybe they haven't landed that job yet, or maybe they did just get laid off for the first time. Were you scared? If so, how did you work through that? What was your mindset like?
I think I've always been apprehensive about it. I'm a fairly risk-averse person, so I've always been cautious about it. But the flip side is, and my wife always criticizes me for that quite lightly, that actually the safest roles I've ever had have been when I've been running my own business. They're the longest roles I've had without something going wrong with the business and without having to lay people off or be laid off.
Yeah.
So, and same with contracting work, which is supposed to be more risky than permanent employment. Many of my contracts have lasted longer than permanent roles. I've been made redundant a couple of times in my career. So, the record being 7 days. I joined Compaq in 2001, shortly before I did decide to start my own company, just before HP took them over.
Okay.
On the morning of my 7th day, we were all called into the office. The guy sat next to me, it was his 2nd day, and told that the office was shutting down and the whole team was being made redundant.
Wow. Still onboarding and thank you,
Yeah.
but no thank you. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, to be fair,
you mentioned some of the... Go ahead.
Per day, it's the most money I've ever made in my life because they gave us a fairly generous redundancy payout. So it worked
silver
out
lining.
in the end, and it was a fairly good time in 2001 as well, particularly as a C++ developer. As having recently been on the job market, I picked up the phone and called a couple of people back, and I had a new job the next day.
Yeah.
So
I love that. Now, we've teased coding challenges throughout this episode, but I want to maybe dive into it now. You want to talk about what was the origin story of that? I guess that's the question. What was?
So, in a couple of years ago, a friend of mine, guy who's introduced me to his current job and I've worked with in the past, obviously we're both from C++ background, he sort of started talking to me about Rust and said that I'd quite enjoy it. I had a little look at the time, but couldn't see many people using it and couldn't see that it would be immediately applicable to what I was doing. And then, but it as some of us fairly strong C++ background, it had an interest. I started looking at it again in December of 2022. Didn't have much spare time. Then got a little bit of time when I was on holiday in February. Was thinking about it, and then was starting to go through like, okay, I'm getting to the point now I can write a few programs in this. I want to do something substantial. So I have typically approached learning a new programming language by building clones of applications or building things. So, for example, back in 1998, when I was trying to learn a little bit more about what I now refer to as mechanical sympathy, so writing code that makes the best use of the computer. Every part of the computer is optimized for it, so it's very, very fast. I'd read Michael Bash's graphics programming black book, where he talked a lot about those kind of ideas and how to optimize code and make it extremely fast. I wanted to learn a bit more about that, so I started using that to see, and I was then going through some projects. And one of the particular projects I did then was writing a compression using Huffman encoding, and so I decided to start doing some of those challenges again in Rust, and also picking out a few new things like let's build a web server again in Rust and figure out how to do that. Build an application load balancer, and then some more new ones like let's build a clone of Redis or a clone of a part of Redis. So I was doing those as a way of learning Rust. At the same time, also on LinkedIn, I saw somebody like a post about their MVP or an MVP of a customer of theirs. I think they might have been a fractional CTO, and saying that they were 2 years into building the MVP and 750,000 euros. And I was like, no, that's not an MVP. If you spent 2 years on it and €750,000, you've missed the point of an MVP.
Right.
So it was the weekend. I didn't normally post on the weekend, so I somewhat facetiously, somewhat seriously, just put a very simple online post on LinkedIn, because I say I'm risk averse. I don't believe in doing anything and investing that kind of money till you've proven as a market. And to go back to when I was running Crickett Software and we did consultancy, I met a lot of small businesses and small business owners where people came to us and said, I've just been made redundant. I've had this redundancy payout of 50 or 100,000. I'm going to start a business doing this. Can you build my website? And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put all the money into it. It's going to be great. And a lot of their ideas would listen to and go, Dave, no. We're not taking your money because we know it'll go drastically wrong. Your idea is not unique. You don't have go away and prove it first, figure it out. Or, okay, you're going to take your 50,000, you're going to buy 40,000 stock, you're going to spend 10,000 on your website. Who's going to come to your website? How are you going to market it? Have you thought of SEO? How are you going to drive traffic to it? Oh, I just put it on the internet and they will come. It's like, no, it's not Field of Dreams. You build it, they will come. It doesn't work out that way.
Yeah.
Figure out your marketing, and you're going to need half your budget for marketing, because that's what we do and that's how we get customers. And very few people would take our advice, unfortunately. Quite a lot of them we'd meet again in a year's time and I've gone bankrupt. So I've learned the hard way to build an MVP, prove it, validate it.
Yeah.
So I somewhat facetiously put a post on LinkedIn saying, if your MVP costs more than $100, takes you more than 2 weeks to build, it's not an MVP. And it was more of a, how do I get people to think this through and actually pause and think, so they don't do something crazy like spend $750,000 in 2 years building an MVP. And that got a lot of response. And like I say, at the same time I was doing these challenges to learn less, and then quite a lot of negative response, to be honest. A lot of people said, you're an idiot. Software developers' time for 2 weeks costs way more than $100. It's like, yeah, I know that, but the point is, if you're building an MVP, you do it yourself.
That's right.
And you're not paying yourself, you're investing your time to validate your business, so you don't burn your money. And $100 is, buy a domain name, some basic hosting or whatever. And again, there are plenty of examples of this. eBay was done that way. Turned out all right for them.
It did.
Zappos started off with MVP. I've forgotten his name now, but the guy from Tim Ferriss, 4 Hour Workweek, talks about it quite a lot. And there are countless examples with them. So I was talking about this post to somebody, and again said, what the hell? I'll just see if I can get a good example. So $17 on a domain name. Download DocuSource, a couple of days to build a website. Substack's free. Start a newsletter. See if anyone gets interested. And I'll share these coding challenges, and I'll show how easy it is to go and validate that people are interested in something. And like I say, I was aiming for 1,000 people by the end of the year, thinking that I'll show that you can build an MVP. And I didn't intend to make it a business or anything. I just thought, I'll show you can build an MVP. You could go out there and prove, even if I can get 1,000 people reading this newsletter, I've shown how simple it is and how you can build an MVP for that. And in the meantime, I'll have fun. I enjoy writing about coding challenges. I'll share them, and I'll probably learn quite a bit in the process.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible resource. And I'm curious, John, I think I've seen you've also got courses as well, maybe separate from the primary
like I say, I
offering.
wasn't intending to make it a business, but then again, having it go way more successful than I thought. When it passed about 15,000 subscribers between LinkedIn and Substack, somebody approached me and said, can I invest in this? How much money do you want as investment to turn into a business and take it forward? And I was like, wasn't really planning to be a business, but that's interesting. I thought, hey, So I talked to a few people and explored it and thought, okay, I could do something with this. But then somehow over, I saw a post from one of the co-founders, I think, of Maven, talking about cohort learning and cohort courses. So I thought, okay, again, let's validate this. Sticking to my ethos of, we need to validate it, and you can do it in 2 weeks or less for less than $100. So it's free to use Maven. I mean, yes, if you make a sale, you pay them 10%, but it's free to use it. So I'll set up a sales page, set that up. I'll go through their free course accelerator and learn how to build a cohort course, take all their advice. And then I'll turn one of the coding challenges into a course, and we'll see if anyone does it. So I built that out, went through the process, did. They recommend putting a course survey up and say, if you get, I think it's 50 responses, they say it looks like you've got a good thing for a course. So I say validated every step, built the course survey, I think with 6 questions that they suggested, put it on the Coding Challenges mailing list, got several hundred responses. So it's like, okay, that looks like it's worth it. So again, then built out the course, put that up, and did the course throughout August. Had some people on that. Was moderately successful. There's a couple of people that were very active and engaged. There weren't as much engagement as I would have liked. I would have liked more people turning up to the live sessions to make it more interactive, which is why I've been hesitant about laying another one, because the people that turned up, it was very good and interactive, but I wanted more of the people that were on the course to turn up and get more, because I wanted to focus a lot on code reviews and how you interact and how you get the soft skills of that, and how you deal with, you come along and somebody goes, hey, code review my Clojure, and you go, I've never seen Clojure before in my life. Which, okay, maybe not with Clojure, but it happens that you, particularly having been a consultant and a contractor, I've come into companies, I've joined companies to work on C and then ended up dealing with Perl. I joined companies to work on C++ and then ended up dealing with Java. So you kind of, it's quite a useful skill to learn to drop into things and to be able to code review it, and to do that code review when you're trying to code review somebody's code and you don't know the language, so it helps on the soft skills. So I wanted a lot more of that, and broadening the skills and adding to that skill set for people, and I'd have liked it to be more interactive and have more people there. So did that. I haven't decided whether or not to learn any more yet. I've been exploring that, and in the meantime I've had a lot of requests for a cheaper, more accessible course for people. So I've got quite a big audience spread around different parts of the world where maybe the $500 and Maven course is not particularly affordable. So part of that, I thought I can take some of what was on the course and make it a bit more accessible, both perhaps aimed a bit more at juniors and also make it accessible and pricing wise. So again, I put up a few posts about that, got enough interest, and I've been building out that course, and that launches in a couple of weeks' time on the 17th of November.
Now, John, I know we're coming up on our time, and I want to be respectful of yours, but I got to ask you, to those that don't follow John on LinkedIn, you're probably one of the only ones, because I think when I last checked, you're over 60,000 followers. And I wanted to ask you, in your time creating content on LinkedIn, what are some of the most interesting learnings that you've had?
I think the most interesting learning is what a powerful platform it is, which I kind of kicked myself for, because I was one of the first 100,000 users on LinkedIn. I've had an account for a very long time, was on the platform in, I want to say 2003 maybe, when I first joined. But I've been very, very passive on it. I only really started posting in late 2020 and really started taking it seriously and creating content on it since March this year.
Okay.
So I don't have the numbers for the beginning of the year, but back in April I was at 4,000 followers.
Wow.
So yeah, I kind of regret that I didn't start earlier.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it just speaks to
I've been on the platform and hadn't seen the opportunity it presented to grow an audience and start, connecting and growing that network. Which I feel especially stupid for, because in my first business, Crickett Software, nearly all of our customers actually came through networking. Our marketing brought us introductions to people, but our best work and our best customers came from networking. Our biggest individual contract actually came from the husband of a lady that we met networking. And we talked to this lady multiple times. There was no overlap in the work that she did and we did, and there was no need for either of us to use each other's services. But we'd always talked to her and been polite and met her around lately. We had no idea who she was married to, but one day we got a call and met somebody, got a very large contract, and at the end of the night said, so how did you hear of us? He said, my wife is this lady. Believe you know her. I was like, okay, didn't know that. So
knew the power of networking, but didn't connect that dot with LinkedIn but you did eventually, John. And I mean, that growth is phenomenal. And I think it speaks to the quality of your content.
Thank you.
Yeah. Man, I know we're at time. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about today that we didn't?
No, I think we covered quite a wide range of things. So it's been a pleasure, James. Thank you.
Yeah, no. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story. I'd love to have you back on the future if you're interested to see how things have progressed. And yeah, I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing.
Yeah, I say thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I'd be delighted to come back.
Thanks for listening. If you got value from today's show, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and a review on Apple or Spotify. It's a free way you can support the show and help other people just like you find the story and others like it. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow the show on whatever podcast application you use. And most importantly, if you know someone that might be interested in breaking into tech, tell them about the show.